Welcome to the Knack for Business podcast. Get more details and opportunities from our website, knackforbusiness.com.
From an audience perspective, why are you working so hard in your business but still not seeing the profits or growth that you expected? That's exactly what John from Raz Square helps solve. He shares how to command your message, attract ideal clients, price for value, and not time. And finally, turn stalled growth into real profit. If your business feels more like a job than a vehicle for freedom, don't miss this one. Our guest is John Geese. Brings a wealth of real-world experience from both the boardroom and the shop floor. By supporting small business owners in Minneapolis, St. Paul, John later rose through the corporate ranks, serving clients across a wide range of industries. In 2013, he stepped away from the corporate world to focus on what truly matters to him, helping people grow. Since then, he's coached leaders across North America, Europe, in leadership, presentation, and sales. Now, John is all in on serving small business owners, helping them create new customers, new revenue, new profits. As he puts it, he's all about Main Street over Wall Street. John, pleasure to have you here today. You're our final podcast recording for Season 3. It's great to have you here. Do you have your favorite quote or saying, sir?
My favorite quote, I collect quotes, so there's a lot of them, but one that really resonates in how I think about business is, don't let anybody kid you. It's all personal. Every bit of business. They call it business. Yeah, but it's personal as hell. You know where I learned that? The Don. This is from Michael Corleone in The Godfather. Too many people treat business as if it's something other than humans serving humans. We treat FTEs as numbers. We treat clients as targets and accounts, and we forget that there are humans there. And this is a personal, in-your-face kind of thing.
Who's your main hero?
One that has always inspired me is Teddy Roosevelt. He was a sickly little kid, and then he grew up to be this bear of a dude. I've read his book about a trip down the River of Doubt, where he took a trip down the Nile River in his 60s, almost killed him. I mean, the things that they went through and how they survived and what he went on to do after that is really inspiring.
Small business, you figure that, we'll just dive right into this. Small business, You figure they have a good sense of what's going on. You can see across the desk if something's happening or not happening. Why does revenue stall for small businesses?
You know, Bernie, this is one of those times that I would like to have a screensaver that shows a box that depends, because it kind of depends, you know. Mostly it's because they've got up and through sheer willpower, the owner has created some customers. They rarely drill down on who their ideal customer is, how that ideal customer buys, what motivates them to buy, and then create a message around that. You've been to countless networking rooms where people say, hi, I'm your insurance agent, I'm your branding specialist, I'm your HVAC guy, blah, blah, blah. But when you tell people that I help millennials buy the loft of their dreams in downtown Toronto, now you know someone that's got, I'm clearly not a millennial anymore, but that's a hook for me, right? So it's really a problem solution. You know, the problem that painters solve is not painting the house. Is, will they be on time? Will they deliver on time? Will they walk away with deposit? Will they leave a mess? Are they precise in their edging? We want to help our business owners talk to the problems that our clients have with their industry, not just, I need a financial advisor, so anyone will do. How do I know you're not the next Bernie Madoff? The best example I use is pizza. Domino's is the largest pizza brand in the world. They're not the best pizza parlor. It's mediocre at best, but they're going to do about $1 billion too. Papa Murphy's, but they built that around hot, fast, and fresh for young college kids. Papa Murphy's is hotter and fresher. This year, they're going to get close to $900 million. It comes from your own oven. California Pizza Kitchen will give you the gourmet experience. We'll give it to you on a cauliflower crust with a glass of wine. They're about $500 million. If you can distinguish pizza, which is just 4 things, you can distinguish anything. And that's where business owners hit the wall.
We have a bond you're not even aware of.
You have a tagline that I sense is more than a tagline. Next week, I'm publishing a book that actually talks about coaching for Main Street instead of Wall Street.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, you got me at a low. Tell me a story, John.
I worked with corporate companies for a long time. We had lots of investors come in. The executives got all happy and fun, and life was good for a year or two. Then customers began to suffer. Employees began to be treated as cannon fodder. When I graduated from college back in the 80s, they said only about 15% of mergers and acquisitions actually deliver long-term value to shareholders, customers, and clients. I was in a networking event. It was pre-COVID, so let's say 2017. When you think about Main Street, they're the people buying tickets to the softball tournament. They're the people supporting community theater. They're the people that if times are tough, they think 2 and 3 times before they lay off Mary because they know Mary is a human being. We saw it in COVID. Wall Street doesn't really care. The government is often ineffective. What we saw in COVID, the small business owners on Main Street were exempt. They were the ones that had to be in the field going to work to serve us. When our small business owners thrive, our communities thrive. I don't know about you, but I'd rather have a thriving community than send all my money to some guy somewhere else.
Everyone has the right to use any language they want. Anytime I hear language like market dominating, I always think of the Terminator. Tell me what you mean by it.
Thank you for that. So in this case, the domination is you own the market. When people think coaching, when people think pizza, when people think I need my auto fixed, when they think of your brand category, they think of you. And the only way we can do it is to really understand our message. And in order to get our message right, we have to understand our customer. So it's who is your ideal customer? What are their desires, their wants? What are they really looking for? What problem do they have? Again, it's not, I need my auto fixed. It's how do I know you're not going to saddle me with new parts that I don't need? How do I know you're not going to like financial advising? How do I know you're not a Bernie Madoff interested in your commissions, not really serving me? I mean, they all say they're fiduciaries now, but they're not all fiduciaries, at least here in the States. We really have to address the problems, the fears, the concerns of our customers. And if we do that, there's a simple solution. It's what's the problem they have with my category or that I'm trying to solve, and what's the solution? And when you put those two together, let's say like melts in your mouth, not your hands, like M&Ms did, that become, it's like you're in a dinner party and someone rings the bell and it's your name. When you get that messaging right, your ideal customer goes, you understand me. And that's the first step to building a business, right? I have to know that you get me. Then we get to build trust, and that's through our education process, whether that's a sales call, a white paper, a book, what have you. And then it's, what would you recommend? And for consultants like me and you, that's the dream question.
Small businesses, I see this with somebody that will introduce a brand new product. Let's say the SaaS space. How much should I charge for the access to this? Should I do subscription? Should I do it, one-off, lifetime? Maybe I come up with a new cookie and it's actual tangible. How do I figure out the pricing? Is there a bit of imposter syndrome leaking in? Do I price it a certain way and then I'm underpricing myself?
I would say that most small business owners underprice themselves to start. My experience is they're afraid that if they price what they're worth, they won't win the deal. So they're eager to get the deal. And they don't really realize the value that they deliver. It's the proverbial story about the pipe fitter. His problem with the plumbing, he comes down, goes bang on the pipe with the wrench and charges $100. Customer's like, why should I pay you that? You were here 5 minutes. So he goes, you're right. But here's $5 for the 5 minutes was here, but $95 for the 30 years experience to let me know right where to hit the pipe. Oftentimes we deliver real value to our clients. It's worth tens of thousands of dollars. And we price ourselves at an hourly rate of $50, $75, $90 an hour. And we can just do better. First step is research what the market's doing. Then think about, do you want to play at the high end of the market or the low end of the market? Let's say childcare. If I'm don't have a lot of money. I'm really interested in security, safety, and making sure my kid's doing well. If I'm high income, high earner, I can pay extra money. I might like the daycare center that's got, a Dell computer lab and it's learning, and my kid will come out reading at a first grade level before they're in kindergarten. So really decide which end of that spectrum you want to play at, and then price accordingly to the value you give.
I like the idea of value-based pricing. I think most of my listeners think that's witchcraft. Tell me what you mean by value-based pricing.
Well, we just kind of talked about it, right? A few years ago, when I was underpriced, I probably still underpricing myself. But when I was underpricing my services, one of the things I did was I went and started, so how much money have my clients made working with me versus what I bill for a month's worth of work? It was like a 2,200 to 1 return. There's an opportunity there to raise your rates and deliver even more value. So if what you do provides $10,000 worth of value, if you're charging $75 for that, wow, you got a steal. Most people would be, pretty happy with 2 to 1. 3 to 1 is really good. 4 to 1, even better. But when you can deliver, 10 to 1 X returns, you should be pricing for the value that you bring.
Do you find that you would scale that? I've seen some people proposition it such that this is what the puppy in the window costs. I know you can't afford it now, but as you have that success, as you have that yield coming back at you, it's almost like a subscription service. You're going to pay to complete the journey as you grow. Do you advocate for that, or do you decide it's large corporation? I get it. I do this, you'll have this yield. It's not instant on, but you'll see it over time. Is there a different approach in that process?
I'm going to see if I understood the question correct. Was it when I start, I offer a price of, and I'm going to make up a number, $500 a month. As we go along, there's more value delivered. It'll scale to 1,000, 2,000, 10,000. Is that what I heard you say?
That's right.
I'm working with a client right now. They've started their own business. They're kind of struggling with cash flow now. So we've built a program that each quarter the price goes up. So I get what I would normally get over the course of the year, but we've scaled up to it versus all up front. So I have to work a little bit harder, perhaps.
Is that a good approach, though, if you're writing for a business model? Is that a good way to grow and build those relationships? And then later on, you can say, listen, unless you're flush with cash, let me help you.
It would depend on the business. If you're an auto mechanic, you have certain costs, parts, pay your teams, rent, etc. It really does depend. If you're a consultant, I would encourage you to be flexible in your pricing. A lot of business owners in the goods space don't have a handle on their costs. I can remember working with a guy one time, because he was a nice guy, he kept discounting his part because for him, they felt kind of pricey. And sometimes he'd discount those 50%. I said, dude, let's just for 1 month, let's see what happens. Hold your price. And he was pretty good. He probably held the price 80% of the times. At the end of the month, he said, Don, I've got $6,000 more in my pockets this month. I said, well, that's what happens when you hang on your margin. So there's not a simple answer to that question. It's, if you're a consultant, you can scale it up until you don't have to scale it anymore as you're starting. As you're starting, you're hungry for business, just like your clients are looking for solutions. Once you're successful, in the speaker world, we always say, when you get too busy, double your fees. Half your clients will go away, you'll make the same amount of money. Then you do it until you're full, double them again.
If you're a newbie or you're starving to death, you start seeing clients where they're not clients. You start seeing prospects where there are not prospects. How do you help people design? I don't like the word avatar, but certainly it fits some cases. How do you help them design their perfect client so they can say no to the others and serve them better?
So there are a couple things. There are the demographics and the psychographics. The demographics are age, income, etc. So if we go back to the childcare, for example, it's depending on how we're going to build and who we want to serve, we're going to build accordingly. Domino's is a great example. Domino's wanted to serve kids pizza hot, fast, and fresh. There was no takeout. They built their business around commissary kitchens within 20 minutes of a college campus. Papa Murphy said, we don't want to deliver. We don't want the oven. So we'll make it and you'll put it in your own oven. So while Domino's is probably spending tens of thousands of dollars on air conditioning, Papa Murphy's is not. And that's dependent on who they decide as their customer. So you really have to decide, who do you want to serve? Often it's ourselves in the market. Most owners start a business because they're frustrated with what they've seen for themselves, or they were in a career and said, I can do better than that. So that tells you who you want to serve. But then it's, what's going on in my head? What are my emotions around this? What are my aspirations? If I want to build a enterprise where I have 5, 6, 7 locations, or do I want a lifestyle business where I can work from Portugal 3 months out of the year? I met a lady at a meeting last week. She spent 3 months this year in Portugal. Not big. But once you know the demographics, income is going to affect how much they can pay, right? So you have to figure all of that out. Then I have a worksheet for them. And then you have to figure out the psychographics. Sometimes that's, what kind of radio are they listening to? Where are they going for information? What do they read? Do they want freedom from this? Do they want to be like an absentee owner, or do they like to be a hands-on operator? All of those things go into determining who your ideal customer is. And for every business owner, it's going to be a little bit different.
So if you have a message, and I get what's going on, if you're setting up an offer, how do you craft the offer so that literally it's like showing up if you're hungry and you're having fresh steak or a hamburger, the scent triggers you right off the bat. You don't need to be asked twice. Do you want some? How do you write up an offer that draws them in that tightly?
So I'm going to tell a story. We all remember the Budweiser Super Bowl ad where the horses saved the puppy from the wolves. Really heartfelt, warm advertisement. They pulled that ad after 9 weeks because beer sales declined, because the tension was resolved. So as we're thinking about our offers, if we've done the work on our ideal customer, we know their problems, we know what they're looking for. In fact, I just had a conversation this morning with one of my mentors, trying to put something together, and it was very logical. I get that. You want to appear that way. You don't want to feel like you're selling. We all hate hyperbole, but you need to remind that guy you want to talk to of the pain he's in or she's in. Are you feeling? Are you experiencing? Are you frustrated? Pick how aggressive you want to be with that state that you're experiencing. How would you like to find your way to the promised land? I had someone a long time ago introduce a letter of engagement. Depending on the price of your offer, it could be, here's your deal, or it could be, take this next step and download a white paper. It could be, from the white paper, you go to the next step and do an assessment. From there, you get a call and have a conversation. And so each time they're making micro commitments to come to the place where it just makes logical sense to do business with you.
Many business owners, for whatever reason, they get trapped in a scarcity mentality and they start chasing things. How do you help people add revenue when cash is tight?
Great question. So we all have clients, right? Hopefully we all have clients. If you're a business owner and you have clients, the first thing you should do is figure out a great example. You go to a local coffee shop and you buy a cup of coffee. If you're like me, you're perusing the pastries while you're waiting. She comes back and says, would you like a croissant, a Rice Krispie treat with your coffee? A third of the time, we're going to say yes. Most small business owners don't do that. So if they could just do that, revenue would increase. Someone told a story the other day about buying a $5 cup of coffee at the airport, and she offered her an $8 bottle of water, and she bought it because she didn't want to go to another store to get the water. It says something about price and scarcity. A bottle of water is $8 in an airport. It's 39 cents in the value bag, right? But yeah, it's how can you offer a bigger piece? McDonald's made $1 billion when they said, would you like to supersize that? For a couple of pennies of potatoes and soda, they added $1 to the transaction. Brilliant. The other thing, a lot of business owners, this doesn't come to the revenue piece, but more to the profit piece. A lot of business owners will pay their bills like that because we're hardworking people with integrity, but their clients will pay them 60 days later. So really managing your own cash flow while pursuing your client's cash flow coming in some cases requiring half of it up front or finding ways to scale them into a payment. I ran into a Dutch guy, one of those guys that cleans air ducts. First time he cleaned it, he said, if you pay me $9 a month between now and next year, I'll come by and do it again next year for free. He's building himself a recurring stream of revenue that's longer term, and it takes some of the peaks and valleys out of the cash stream.
I'm troubled by in this online economy is the transactional nature of many sales. I'm guessing that you believe a relationship is more important than a client. Tell me how you build a relationship and you make sure that a year from now they're still doing business with you.
I heard that and my brain went in two different directions. If I'm going to buy a heating pad on Amazon, I don't really need a relationship, right?
But it depends if it comes with a masseuse and
Right.
flowers, wine.
Right. It's again, really understanding our ideal customer. But most of what happens for a lot of business owners is something, think about your own business. You went out to buy a refrigerator somewhere in the past, and the salesperson came up to you and said, hi, how can I help you? You said, no, thank you, because we don't want to be sold, right? Now, if you walk out of the store and I don't catch your phone number or your email address, you're lost. We have to find a way to stay in touch with our clients because this data has been around since the 80s. 80% of the sales happen somewhere between 5 and 12 contacts. And so we have to find a way to stay in touch. You can't be like Grant Cardone and show up every day, 5 days a week and say, buy my stuff. But if you provide people really relevant information around what they're looking for, remember, if you did well in the showroom and demonstrated that you get them, and now they're getting information over time while they're looking at other sites or calling other people, now you're building trust. And they're going to do business with the people they trust. So I'll give you an example. Let's say you sell high-end stereo equipment. You got the TV, the sound system, security system, all installed in the house, right? So that's a pretty big ticket item. It's going to take time to make your decision. You want to do your research. So you came in to visit me and I got your email. And then I sent you an email in a couple of days that said, hey, thanks for visiting. Hey, did you know that there's a difference between plasma and LED TVs? Here's the pros and the cons. And then a little while later, another one says, have you thought about Dolby sound as you're thinking about your sound system? Or the woofer under the couch, so when you have those big experiences on the TV, you actually feel like you're in them. You're providing relevant information. It always gives them a chance to contact you, but you're not really saying, buy my stuff.
I always love to be in on the secret. And so I even try to get my listeners in on the secret. You have something called 3 conversations. Tell me about that.
Once you get to a certain size, you have a team. And anybody that's had a team knows it's like herding cats. Sometimes after they've had a little bit of catnip. So how do we build a team that's aligned, growing, and accountable? You have a set of structured conversations held in a cadence. You have the accountability call individually and as a team. For the team, you just have to show the numbers, celebrate the wins. The folks that aren't hitting the numbers, they hate not being on the celebratory end, so they're going to start working. And that's where your one-to-one conversation goes in. The alignment conversation is, sales are going really great this year. Operations is having a hard time keeping up. I need you to slow down sales and maybe pace the orders out a little bit over time so that they have a chance to catch up. With a salesperson, that impacts my revenue, right? So how can I build a team structure that says, I'm going to hold off on placing the orders for a little while you're catching up? That comes through the alignment conversation. Or we used to have a ongoing weekly meeting with a hospital in New Mexico, and they were going through some construction. So when you're talking to patients, they can't go in the main entrance. They have to go into the patient office through the east side parking lot because they're doing construction. So it's keeping track of all the things that are happening in the organization that affect you and how you're impacting the organization. I grew up in the debt collection industry, and the $100,000 that we collected contributed to the MRI machine that the hospital was able to buy. Letting people know the wins that they delivered are as important. And then there's the growth conversation. How do we develop our people? If people get stagnant, they're leaving. Even more so today than when I was a kid. And so we want to find a way to help them. Like, if you're really good on a CRM, I might have you teach the sales team your tips and tricks to the CRM because they don't want to hear it from me. I'm always telling them what to do. And then in the individual conversations, it's what do you need to learn, to grow, to get to so that you can win in your market. So it's really 3 conversations held with 2 different audiences, the individual and the group, to achieve that performance, that alignment, and accountability that drives a consistent stream of revenue.
John, we get people on various parts of their journey, from got laid off last week and now they're self-employed to running some fairly substantial businesses. How do you help owners become leaders instead of managers?
I have one client that just embraces it, loves it. I can remember the day he said, you know what this is? It went through 2 phases. One was, I no longer feel like an associate. I feel like I'm running the firm. And just recently he said, no, I feel like a CEO. So there's a growth that has to go as your business grows. Others, it's like pulling the billy goat that has planted their feet and they don't want to let go. It's about control. As a recovering control freak, I understand that. The fear is that if I don't get my hands in everything, it's not going to get done the way I want it done. But every organization that has to go through me or through the manager or owner, they become the bottleneck. They become the throttle that prevents growth. If they really want to grow, they either have to evolve and grow with them, or they have to find someone to take that role. Everybody's a little bit different. I learned from Malcolm, what's your primary goal? What do you want out of life? You got to dig a little bit through most of us because we're going to say something stupid when you first answer. But you really get down to it. I want time, I want freedom, I want money. And it's normally attached to a family member, family experience, or something like that. When people get stuck, the question is, all right, remember you want this. What are you willing to do to reach your primary goal? Do you want to stay stuck, or are you willing to step out of your comfort zone?
It almost sounds like what you just mentioned as you're talking about not being a micromanager, but you also want certain result of quality of service, which then kind of hints at if there's a recipe to doing it right, you got to write it down. Is that something that you help ingrain into that person going, I started small, now life is good. Growth's happening, scale's happening, the sun is shining on me, and I'm all of a sudden not getting enough lifts.
Well, you hit it on the head. The reality is that once we start running, I mean, I'm an egghead. I know a lot. I love hanging out in my head, but I can't give you that. And the reason I do is because I read books and I take stuff that you know, and now I know it. So we have to document our process. You know, some people see that and they go, yep. And others go, I don't have time to do that. For those people, this tool called the iPhone has a recorder on it. You can just walk around and record what you're doing. You can video what you're doing with all the tools we have available. And then you can give that to someone to write it up. In fact, a lot of policies now are, here's the transcript. Here's a visual of someone actually walking through that. My very first coaching client was a CEO that wanted a salesperson to sell more. I said, great. How much more? I just want him to sell more. Well, what's more? Is $1 more enough? No. Well, he says, I'm not going to set a quota. Can you tell me what's wrong with that? How can you be accountable to to something that you don't know. So if we want our teams to perform and to hit the goals that we set, it's incumbent upon us as leaders to document it, to teach it, to show it, and to hold people accountable. That's the only way it's going to get done. And so if you don't want to do it, I got a ton of people that will help you write your policies that I can introduce you to. But you have to have them.
I'm noticing is the three of us are all on the other side of 50.
What do you mean?
Yeah, it was fun.
And one thing that I see being a huge deal is businesses planning to outlive the owner's day-to-day activity. We can talk about systems, operational procedures, or just what do you want and who's doing it. But how do you help people have a business to sell in a year? Not next week necessarily, but how to help them sell a business in a year or 18 months so that what they're doing is going forward.
So the ideal answer to that question is you start building your business to exit, and you start building your business. It will make your business a lot more fun. When your business has systems and people and financial and recurring revenue and a strategy to move forward, life gets easier. If you're trying to do it at the end, what you're going to end up with, great example, my barber, Bill had been in business for 30 years. He got into it because he couldn't work for other people. He had 8 chairs in his salon. Only 4 were occupied at any given time. He didn't have anybody at the front desk, didn't have anything happening. He sold that business for $180,000. Nick, the guy that took it over, has 14 chairs in almost the same space, like in the same center. They're all full all the time. He's got coffee, beverages, and wine, and he'll give you a t-shirt when you walk in so that hair doesn't get down the back of your neck. That's a 7-figure business. All because he took the time to say, yes, this sucks today that I have to work till 6 o'clock tonight instead of 5 o'clock to write out a policy or to think about my business. But it's going to save me 25 hours or 2,000 hours over the lifetime of the business.
Good. There's almost a meme like, don't go in for the haircut. You, the barber, right? Don't get your own haircut. In a situation like the barber scenario, do you walk up and let's say someone says, listen, John, help me. I'm feeling lost. What can I do to be on target? Do you actually review what they're doing? And then, you got the policies, but it's almost like applying a lean principle, right? Listen, your recipe says do this following 5 steps. Let's shift it around and you can expand yourself a bit more.
So the first step is to do an assessment, right? And you have to make sure that you're talking the same language. Typically, I work with clients over 2.5, 3 hours to kind of make sure we understand what the languages we're sharing and then demonstrate what different levers will do for their business. And where they're bleeding cash, they need something. Like it's hard to hire people. We don't have any money. It depends on where people are in the journey. That's why the name of my book is New Clients, New Revenue, and New Profits. Those things come in order. After the assessment, we pick 3 or 4 primary pieces to move. If you get your messaging right, and that leads to 10% new clients, and you get your offer right, and that leads to 5% new clients, and you get your pricing right, and that adds another 3%. All of a sudden, that's not just 18%, that's 21, 22% because it compounds. But you pick the big rocks and you start working the levers to drive results on those. The key to all of this is to have something measurable to say, are we moving down the path to get there? Too often we look at the lagging indicator, the thing that happened. We made the sale or we didn't, but there's all sorts of stuff that we do in the front that if we pay attention to those leading indicators and we're consistent I emphasize consistent because I have to work on consistency for myself. It's consistency that drives success in the work I do with my clients. Every week we're looking at a number and did that number move in the right direction or not? And what do we need to do to move that number in the right direction?
You mentioned a book. John, where do I get?
Like I said to you as we were starting, I'm in the middle of a rebrand. When I'm done with the rebrand, it will be on my website. And I'll give you guys links to all of that. So by the time you go to market, that book will be available to everybody that you know.
So where do you see the business going and the business universe at large? Because obviously you're responding to a need, right? Let me help you. And you're going to talk to your clients in the frame of reference of what they're going to need. Where do you see it heading?
That is the $1 million question, right?
You know, it depends. Are you?
I'm going to leave it right here. We'll just call it $1 million question. Because, I mean, there's a lot of, I call it chaos, turbulence, back and forth. There's a lot of stuff shifting daily, sometimes even hourly in the world. What I'm noticing with my clients is that a lot of people that were kind of hesitant to move are starting to move because they're saying, we can't stop, even though we don't know where it's going, because we don't know when we're going to know where it's going. So they're having to learn how to operate in uncertainty. Where the market, the business, the broad industry is going, I am not a futurist. I don't know if you guys remember, I read John Nesbitt's book, again, Future Shock from the 70s. He was a futurist. He got most of it right. I mean, we're living in that world right now. If you're asking about where my business is evolving, I'm moving more and more into helping people develop their initial leadership team, taking their employees and helping their employees build ownership. That helps me get to a market that's a little bit above and beyond that solopreneur that's just starting out. I'd like to help them, but I'd rather help them in kind of a group situation because they often don't have the money to afford my retainer. When you get in a group of peers, there's an energy. He'll used to call it a mastermind. If you can get the right people in the room that are like you, that are going through the same stuff everybody elevates. To answer your question, I see more moving myself into larger firms to start helping with people stuff, in addition to just the sales and marketing, and finding ways to help that smaller entrepreneur in a group setting.
John, is there a geography that you like more than others? I mean, yes, we can be anywhere in the world, but is a geography that you feel happier to work with?
North America. Yeah, I had an opportunity to do some work overseas a while back. It was great. 2 US teams, 3 British teams, a French German team, a Spanish Italian team, and a Mexican team. The Brits almost on time. The Germans were early. The French showed up when they wanted to. The Spaniards and Italians never showed up. The Mexicans worked their tail off, and the Americans said, yeah, I don't know if I need to be here, but my boss says I have to be here. It taught me a lot about stereotypes and where they come from. But that time zone difference, that 6-hour time zone difference, it can be hard.
So if this resonated, where would they get a hold of you, John?
My email address is john@johngeese.com. I'm pretty visible on LinkedIn. My website currently is ras-squared.com. And when that changes, it's going to redirect you to my new business. By the time you hear it, it'll be there. It's going to be Resonant Business Solutions. That's all about, when your message, your mission, your service is at the same frequency, the same needs and problems that your clients have, there's a resonance. And just like tuning forks, if this one is vibrating and you're tuned the same, this one vibrates. You almost can't not get together.
You can, but it's not harmony. Your business is discombobulating. John, I want to say thank you so much for being here today. And Wayne, being a co-host, and you, the Knack for Business listeners, we appreciate your time. And you know what? John still remembers when people couldn't think they could afford to retire because their business lacked value. Think of the barber. Do you get the right bang for buck? No. John's here to help you get that proper haircut without taking a haircut in the process.
That's tweetable.
To reach the podcast hosts, email them at info@creativeinsight.com or by the website creativeinsight.com, spelled KREATIVINSIGH2.com. To reach Wayne at his email, wayne@motive18.ca, that is MOT of his website, motive18.ca. If you would like to be a guest on this podcast and share your knowledge, let us know. We would also appreciate your feedback on the content or formats. Check the show notes for more details. For these podcasts, we like to acknowledge the support and thanks to the following people: Carl Richards from Podcast Solutions Made Simple, a renowned podcast expert; Fred Crouch, who is the Property Wizard podcaster; where Bernie is a co-host, Jovan Strika, the Matt Hive, a co-working space that is more than just a space, then Melanie Weber, Fernie's invaluable business partner, and Wayne Pratt from Motivate You Inc., who serves as both a coach and co-host of these podcasts. Disclaimer. Please note that the Knack for Business podcast episodes are meant solely for educational and general informational purposes. The information and opinions contained within are not intended to be professional advice on any subject matter. The thoughts, views, and opinions expressed by the participants are their own personal beliefs and do not represent the views of the podcast hosts or any affiliated organizations. This podcast is not a replacement for consulting with certified experts in your area who possess knowledge of your unique situation. The hosts of the podcast, along with any participants or affiliated groups, do not take responsibility for any actions taken or not taken based on the information presented in this episode. It is highly recommended that individuals seek guidance from their own personal advisors in fields such as accounting, law, or other pertinent areas prior to undertaking any actions or making decisions that may impact their financial, legal, or other aspects of life.